In 1968, days after King's assassination, Michigan Representative John Conyers brought a bill to the Congress floor that called for Civil Rights Day to be recognized as a federal holiday in commemoration of King and the civil rights movements that swept the United States during the previous decades. After many failed attempts and nearly 2 decades later, Republican President Ronald Reagan signed the bill passed by Congress, which deemed every third Monday of January Martin Luther King Day. Of course, the passing of this bill was met with violent opposition from Southern conservatives. In opposition to Martin Luther King Day, the states of Alabama and Mississippi founded Robert E. Lee Day, which is still celebrated. It wasn't until 2000 when all 50 states officially recognized Martin Luther King Day as a federal holiday. Many civil rights leaders recognize conservatives have been the constant enemy of progressive and leftist movements. In fact, they have always remained the easiest target for criticism from the left. However, leaders such as King and Malcolm X were determined to educate the black community of the dangers of white liberalism. King appealed to some white liberals because of his peaceful approach to protest. However, when King began to gain momentum because of his powerful speeches and writings against poverty, the military-industrial complex, the war in Vietnam, police brutality, and for integration and democracy and universal health care, King, much like Malcolm X, found himself on the FBI hit list. King and Malcolm X, though taught to students to be polar opposites, fundamentally agreed on the violent danger that white liberals pose towards racial progress.
I think that is an answer to that myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme rightists in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
Standing by and allowing white supremacy to infiltrate our democracy has allowed the damage and violence we continue to see against Black Americans in their homes and on the streets of the United States. During the civil rights movements being plural, Congress began to see a rise in support for Black organizations, such as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC. Though their approach to racial and class equity differed, they were fighting for the same resolution: an egalitarian and anti-racist society. The media and white liberals seized the opportunity to pit Black organizations as peaceful and violent. More specifically, Malcolm and the Black Panthers were the greatest target for media smears and vilification.
Tonight, Front Page Challenge welcomes the outspoken Negro leader, Malcolm X.
Sir, what's the real reason why you two men split? Is it merely ideological, or is it personality? What else?
Probably personality. It was not the statement that originally was given by the movement when we split. It's more personality than anything else.
You've called people like Martin Luther King, who just got a Nobel Peace Prize, an Uncle Tom. Is this correct, first?
Well, I'd rather say that in the States, there's a law that has recently been passed, or a decision handed down by the court, wherein if you call someone an Uncle Tom, they can sue you for libel.
Well,
so I never refer to them as Uncle Toms. I would say that Uncle Martin is my friend.
Uncle Martin is your friend, yet you would disagree with his approach to what he wants to accomplish?
Definitely. If his approach would bring about what the black man in America needs to completely eliminate the problem that we have, I would say well and good. But I very much doubt that anyone who adopts the approach that Martin Luther King has been teaching to our people in that country can point to any meaningful gains that has actually served to solve the problem.
The legacy of King continues to be whitewashed by conservatives and liberals alike. Many today in the year 2021 continue to paint King as only a reverend against any form of violence, despite King stating a riot is the language of the unheard. Even in liberal higher education, Malcolm X has been juxtaposed to MLK as a violent leader who sought to overthrow the United States. This division has been continually pushed by liberals who feared conflict and responsibility. To this day, liberals have yet to take responsibility for their complicit stance on racial inequality, police brutality, and the systemic oppression of black Americans. Despite their differing personalities, King and X fought for the same fundamental human rights: health, food, water, shelter, and income. By the age of 39, both men were murdered in public, which was no doubt a direct threat to all civil rights movements. Over 50 years later, as we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, black men and women are still lynched. Black protesters are met with state violence, and civil rights ideals are still suppressed by the media, white liberals and conservatives alike.